Well, what do you know? It's that time again. Here we are. It seems like it's been forever. Tiger and myself were here 2 weeks ago. It's been 3 weeks for John. This is Garden America, in case you're wondering, those tuning in, those that have been just, as they say, chomping at the bit. But somebody told me one time it's actually champing at the bit. That's the actual
I heard that too.
term for that as well.
Heard that also.
We are back. It is Garden America. I'm Brian Main, John Bagnasco, Tiger Palafox. Ready, willing, and able. Tiger, we good?
Yeah.
I look at that express. Every time I look at you and you're looking down at the video equipment, you have this expression on your face. Sometimes it's worry, sometimes it's wonder, sometimes it's joy. What is it? What is it now?
It's. I'm hoping that you're not too loud.
Oh, me, yeah.
No,
Sorry.
not you specifically.
Oh, I
us
got you.
in general.
Okay, should I not be? So
I was just wondering when you're talking about the champing at the bit.
yeah, that's what I heard. That it's not chomping but champing.
So is it actually a champion rather than a champion?
It could be. Now, these are things we explore here on Garden America. You think it's just gardening and horticulture and, talking about your weeds and your dirt and your soil. No. We go way, way beyond that,
We
Tiger.
could relate it back, right? Horses
It'll always come
eat
full circle.
Weeds and plants and stuff. So.
Now, John, you were in Texas because you went to the bullfights.
Yeah, I didn't realize, not to the bull, they're not bullfights.
Yeah, we should clarify
We went
that.
to see the bullfighters.
Yeah.
And it's a series of challenges between a red team and a blue team. And then they divide the audience up. One side supports the blues, the other side supports the reds. And we were on the red team, who ended up winning. But
This isn't going anywhere, is it? No, okay.
No.
I see what you're saying.
No, not at all. What I was going to say was, it seems to me, before this started, and they divided us up, I told Shannon, I said, doesn't it seem Red's already at a disadvantage with a bull?
Exactly. But you had fun, huh?
Yeah, it was really fun.
Well, that's not why you went to Texas, though.
We went to visit my son and daughter-in-law in their new home.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, my granddaughter works down the street in Capernaum.
Wow. Which is where? Is that in Italy?
Notice the silence on my end.
No, Capernaum is the studio where they filmed The Chosen.
I was going to say, it sounds very biblical.
Yeah.
The name, obviously.
Yeah, and she's in charge of costumes.
Oh, so
Capernaum
is the name of the studio, not the city.
Right.
And she works at a movie studio place.
Right.
Oh.
Right.
All
So
right.
they film a lot of epics and things, and they've got, like if you say, I need to outfit a Roman legion.
She's got it.
She gets all the stuff ready.
Nice.
My name is Legion. We are many.
That's something completely different.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, that's cool. So weather was nice there?
Yeah, it rained.
Oh, weird.
Only while we were not doing something.
No, well, that's perfect.
How about the weather? What are the temps in Texas this time of year?
Fort Worth area, right?
Yeah, about
Because Texas is big, Brian.
huge.
You can say what's the temperature in Texas, and it could be completely different in 8 different places.
Just ask anybody from Texas how big it is.
It's like the difference in weather in California.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where you were in Texas,
It was in the 70s. I think it got near 80 one day.
Nice.
Okay.
That's
But I'll tell you
perfect.
the worst soil I've ever seen.
Oh, really?
Oh, just solid clay, red clay.
Really?
And when it rains,
that sounds like Georgia. Red clay,
and
Georgia.
if you get out there after a rain and you try to walk through that stuff, I mean, it sticks to the bottom of your shoes. And
Wow. Mountains or no?
no mountains.
It's all flat.
Where we were was hilly.
Yeah, there's hilly. It's
Yeah.
hilly.
So it was nice.
Trees, foresty, or no?
A lot of trees, but they have a lot of oak trees there, and they've got some disease different than what we had here in California.
But a similar problem.
Right.
Babbling brooks? Or just
No,
brooks
they were
that don't
pretty quiet
babble?
while we were there.
Yeah.
I think they started their babbling as you got closer to the election.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, that's enough of that. Anyway, we are back in action. Now, Tiger, 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
it was just you and me. We didn't have a guest.
No.
We had
a great show. Lots of questions.
Yeah.
So we answered a lot of things. John wasn't here to fact check us, so
No.
whatever we
You
said,
said whatever you wanted.
whatever we said
Right.
came out
Well,
perfect.
I know our
Something
tech
about-
guy had a question about why did that show have so many viewers?
Yeah.
Like several thousand
2,000.
more than normal.
2,000. I think we said, when people called to ask, when to plant something,
Yeah.
anytime you feel like it. no matter what it was. Sure.
You gave him
Go for
permission.
it.
2:00 this afternoon's a good time to plant.
Well, my
Something will
answer was
happen.
obvious. I just said John wasn't there.
So speaking of that, we do have a guest today.
Yeah.
Damon is what? Now, if you have the newsletter, you probably read a little bit about Damon's background. But for
I
those
didn't have
that
a
didn't,
chance to read it. What are we talking about today?
So I ran across Damon in an industry article, and he was had an article in an industry magazine, and he had an article on this new movement of using technology to identify plants and problems. He comes from LSU Department of Horticulture.
Just got a box from LSU this week.
Really?
Yeah.
Box of what?
They're
good question, Tiger.
what would I get a box of?
Yeah. Roses from LSU?
Yeah, they're conducting a testing around the country on rose varieties, new rose varieties that
Really?
haven't been named yet. Something like the All-American selections used to do.
Yeah,
when they
maybe
were around.
Damon sent it to you.
Yeah, and I'm one of the testers and
trial garden
Yeah,
people.
trial gardens in California.
Now,
But-
during these trials, does anybody ever get convicted? That's my
Yes,
question.
definitely.
Okay.
There's a lot of murders that happen. Just
Well,
ask,
yeah, a lot
just
of-
ask John. Some of those roses don't come out of
I'll
it.
tell you, speaking of murders, number 54 in gophers.
Gopher?
is- I
Jeez.
went out and bought 3 new gopher hawks. And I don't know why, because I just couldn't find the others. Like,
Wait a minute. You bought 3 not to get more gophers, but you lost the other
I
gopher
lost
hawks?
the other ones.
Like in the places you put them, or they're like you had them in the garage and now you can't find them?
You'll learn this as you get closer to Brian's
you just completely
age and
forgot
my
where
age.
they're at.
Yeah, but it's just like, what happened to that? I was holding it 5 minutes ago, and now I don't know where it is.
Oh, okay. It's one of those
So
things.
it's
So you
one-
don't know if they're in the yard somewhere
My guess is that I probably set them up and forgot that
and
I set
forgot
them
where
up.
they're at.
Right.
Yeah. So you're going to be digging around the yard in a week. and
See,
be like,
this is
"Oh,
another reason why he should have a 24/7 camera
Yeah.
observing that area, not just for safety and security, but to keep an eye on himself.
Yeah,
And then he can go back and
You can go back and review the footage.
That's
Well, I was thinking of attaching those little buttons that you put in your luggage.
Oh, the AirPods
Yeah.
or whatever they are.
Just attach those to things around the yard.
That'd be smart.
not a bad
right?
idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Who are you,
'Cause
is that you beeping
you
over
can-
there or me?
you can then
no, that's
find your
Dana saying all good, looking good.
Gopher Hawk locations by your little AirPod.
Sue wants you to know, Brian, that she just returned from Flagstaff.
She has a good memory.
She went to see the Lowell Observatory.
Ooh, what's that? Is that where you go see planets and stars and stuff
Yeah,
like that?
She saw Saturn's rings.
Yeah,
Ooh,
it's
what?
it's a very old observatory. She knows I went to school there. That's
Yeah.
what she's recollecting. I'm trying to think. There was a discovery made there, like
Like
an
a comet or
incredible,
something?
incredible scientific.
You know what
From
they
the
do,
astronomy
though?
world,
They make observations.
They do. Well,
That's
this was like
called
a
an
historic
observatory.
observation, a discovery. Maybe somebody can fact check us on
Isn't
that.
there a what is it?
Flagstaff or the observatory?
No, I was thinking tonight. There's a meteor shower, right?
Oh, last night was a full moon, I think.
Yeah, that was that supermoon type thing. But
Mm-hmm.
tonight is the one of the biggest meteor showers.
Is it really?
Yeah,
That'll be observable from here
yeah. You're supposed to.
if it's not cloudy.
supposed to lay on your back with your feet going east, face up.
You know what? Real quickly, Sue,
way to clarify that one.
Sue just answered my question. Pluto was discovered.
Oh, from Flagstaff?
Yeah, from that telescope.
Oh, well, that's question. That's got an asterisk on it.
Well, yeah,
I mean, I guess Pluto was discovered.
When I grew up, Pluto was a planet.
Exactly.
Now it was relegated to what, an asteroid? What is it?
It's just a dog now.
Yeah, right?
Here, Pluto.
Wow, John's in rare form this morning.
Wow, he's been saving that one.
You know what? I had no
Good
idea that was
job.
coming.
He had
Okay.
Voices?
We have a minute before the break. Can you get the quote in?
I don't know. We just got copyright cut from Facebook for,
Yeah, really.
for a Pluto
Why did you? What's with the Disney thing you guys were doing?
Exactly.
Okay.
All
Do we
right.
have time?
We have time. Go.
Go.
Okay, the quote's from Henry Rollins. Do you know Henry Rollins?
Yes.
Punk
Yeah, the punk
band?
guy.
Yeah. He said, I've come to regard November as the older, harder man's October. I appreciate the early darkness and cooler temperatures. Puts my mind in a different place than October. It's a month for a quieter, slightly more subdued celebration of summer's death as winter tightens its grip.
Wow.
Ooh,
Sounds like the
Henry.
beginning of a Twilight Zone.
Jeez.
Oh, we saw the one last night, the Twilight Zone. Henry Bemis,
Oh, the librarian?
Burgess Meredith.
Yeah.
Great episode.
Have
gotta
you started
watch it,
watching
Tiger.
them from the beginning? We're
Yeah.
on season 3 now.
We're starting. Anyway, it is break time. We could talk about that. Or, hey, how about some gardening? We've got our guest coming up. Again, what is Damon's last name again, Tiger?
Abdi.
Okay. Stay tuned for that. Going to take a break, welcoming our friends on Biz Talk Radio as well as Facebook Live. This is Garden America. All right. Thank you for hanging in there during the break. We are back here on Garden America. Brian Main, John Bagnasco, Tiger Palafox. Hey, look, we enjoy reading all your comments on Facebook Live. If occasionally we entertain you on Facebook Live, I guarantee that you entertain us every show. So keep up the good work. That said, Damon is ready to go, Tiger. Here we go. And again, thank you so much for being right there with us.
All right. This morning we have Dr. Damon Abdi joining us, and he's an assistant professor of landscape horticulture at the Louisiana State University Ag Center, Hammond Research Station. That is one heck of a title right there. I feel very I feel like I'm talking to a very important person right now, Damon, because of that title, and you are very important. But we're bringing you on for a pretty fun topic here. So, Damon, how's your morning going?
Oh, it's going great. Thank you all for having me on the show. I appreciate being here.
Yeah. And Damon, you're out there in Louisiana, and you're helping LSU with a lot of agricultural research. What is one of the areas that you specialize in?
So in my position, I work primarily with the landscape contractors and also a little bit with the general public. So my goal is to enhance the sustainability of the green industry overall. I do a lot of work in terms of licensing for horticulture, education, pesticide application, irrigation. And then I also have a research program that focuses on water management in the landscape, better establishment of plants, temperature mitigation. So I got a little bit of work in all different areas of the landscape, but I always like just to help anybody who has a green thumb as well.
Yeah. And hey, John, one of the things I was talking with Damon earlier this week, and he's talking about water management and runoff. And I was like, well, in California, water management and runoff to us is how do we conserve it? How do we save it? How do we prevent it from running off? But then I'm thinking Louisiana, like they are like, how do we get it to like go away?
Right.
Too much. And he was saying that Damon, you're actually saying you guys have a little bit of a drought, but it is true that different areas, water management means different things, right?
That means the levee's not leaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've been in Louisiana for about 4 years now. I've been all around the country. But when I came here, my big focus was thinking, too much water. How are we going to be able to get water out of these areas? And whether that's through French drains, whether that's through different green infrastructure. So a lot of my research started with that focus, and it still continues with that primarily. But interestingly enough, over the last 2 years, we've had several extended droughts. So like most water issues, it's either too much or too little.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of work in either way.
Now, I don't know if you have this info, but what is a drought in Louisiana? Because in Southern California and San Diego specifically, our average rainfall every year is 10 inches. And that's an average. So, 1 year we'll get 12, the next year we'll get 8, some years we get 2. What is Louisiana dealing with?
So that's a great question. In terms of quantifying the rain, I don't really have those numbers on me. But what I really noticed was a lot of times, we get ample enough rain that supplementary irrigation is really an afterthought.
Oh.
And especially my first couple years, people would have irrigation, but they wouldn't always need to rely on it. But really last summer, when we had this extended drought throughout most of it, I like to say a lot of people kind of told on themselves with their irrigation practices. I saw a lot of contractors, they'd call me up and they'd say, hey, we put these trees in for this client. They didn't want any water management. They said they were going to take care of watering it, take care of it, make sure it establishes. And several months later, it doesn't look so hot. And a lot of people kind of told on themselves with regards to whether they're putting water down.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting in that way. But also on the other end of the spectrum, a lot of people who had irrigation systems, like a new toy, they want to use it, they want to play with it. Turns out they put too much water down. So some of the plants were getting a little oversaturated, not looking as good as they could. So it's a delicate balance between too little and too much.
Yeah, especially in an area where like for us, it's very hard to put too much because we just have too little. But for an area like you where, you could all of a sudden get a rain and, you could be applying too much irrigation very easily. So Damon, I ran across your information though in a trade magazine about an article that had to do with using your technology to identify plants and diseases and pests, and how people are using it more and more, and how there's some things that people need to be concerned about. And so, just to give kind of a brief introduction on this is, nowadays when we travel around, we have our phones with us, and to put a brand on it, you can use Google, and you take a photo of a plant, and Google will shoot you back a ton of similar images, and hopefully you can identify that plant or that problem. And that's the basic principle of this technology, right?
Yeah. So it all kind of started with, I was reached out to by Angelique Robb with Sync to write about something for the technology issue. And I was sitting there thinking about what topics would make sense. And lo and behold, I get a text from one of my friends with a very grainy image of a plant saying, what's this plant? And I thought, okay, glad that they reached out. This is going to be a little bit of a challenge. And my first thought is, did they use one of these readily available apps? And if so, did they send that same grainy picture? So a lot of these apps, it's a good tool, it's a good technology, but it's not always 100% right. And part of that, certainly it's a technology that's evolving, that's developing, and certainly making leaps and bounds. But a lot of it comes down to pictures not really being representative and people not always taking the best angles to let that technology work, whether that's asking a friend to identify it or using one of those apps.
Yeah, and so, as you mentioned, if you send a close-up picture to a yellow flower and you don't, reveal some of the other details of the plant, it might shoot you back a message about other yellow flowers. But maybe if you took a picture of the yellow flower and then took a picture of maybe the leaves and, maybe some seeds, and you did individual searches on those items or combined them somehow, it could get you more information, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a little bit of sleuthing that goes on when you're trying to picture out which plant it is. So a lot of times I see a very zoomed-in picture, probably a little bit blurry, and it may not always be from the best angle. And for me, I like to work with multiple pictures. The more information you have, the easier it gets. And the first thing I like is to take a nice big step back and get an overall view of the entire plant rather than just that close-up.
Yeah.
When you get the close-up of a small annual or something in a landscape bed, certainly that's more useful. But with a lot of the woody trees, the perennials, when you need to take that big step back to see the overall form of the plant, that's usually the first step that I look at.
Yeah, definitely not good to just take a picture of the trunk of a giant redwood and just be like, hey, what is this, right?
Yeah.
Or taking a picture of a friend of yours from the waist down. and say, identify this, please, for me.
Yeah. Hey, David, we're going to have to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll keep chatting with you about some of the techniques that people need to consider and maybe some of the other things that people can use this technology for, especially when it comes to plants. But we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back talking with Dr. Damon Abdi.
There you go. And again, this break for our friends on Biz Talk Radio, coming back much quicker here on Facebook Live. Stay with us. Okay, just like that, we have returned here back on Garden America, our friends on Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live, as we continue talking about the identification of plants, the certain apps, and hey, better to get a view from far away, Tiger, than close up as we continue with Damon.
Hey, Damon. So one thing, I know you follow our show regularly, so I'm sure you're familiar with John over here. But John, believe it or not, how long ago was it? Because you were involved with one of the first plant identifying apps, right?
I wasn't really involved, but Sharon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did help her out a little bit.
Yeah, you did. But that was what, 15 years ago? Maybe more?
Oh,
yeah,
I'm not sure.
I would say about 15 years.
I'm not sure, but they had people all over the country, and you would take a picture.
Yeah.
And you would post it.
And it would get sent to this
to
coalition.
This group right, and they would identify it, and a day later you would get an answer back.
Yeah, I mean, think about how things have come along, Damon, because that was 15, 20 years ago, and it was an app, and they would say, hey, you take a picture, and the whole basis of this app is initially it had all the people identifying.
Right.
So it just had a bunch of experts in the field identifying plants and whatever it was. But in the hopes that AI would catch up, and the more data they collected, they wouldn't need the people anymore. And then AI would just kind of answer these people's questions as it came across. But that's the way it was, is used to get these pictures, used to get the location of where the picture came from.
And sometimes people would, the people identifying it would send you back a question. Where do you live?
Yeah.
Is this in sun or shade?
Yeah. So I mean, things have come a long way with these identification apps, and Damon, in your field as well, with the use of professional horticulture, you can identify pests and some disease with these as well, right?
Yeah, so this some of the different apps will be able to say, hey, maybe you've got a little bit of drought issues, or wilting issues, maybe you've got a little bit of pest issues, things like fungal diseases a lot too. When you see certain signs of pathogens on leaves, it'll give you a little alert, and then it gets you thinking on what potential issues could come of it. The technology is really, really interesting how it's been growing by leaps and bounds, and it's only going to get better. And talking about how, in the past it would have been posted somewhere and you have a panel of people who are going to weigh in on it. So it's interesting to see that all these insights are being incorporated into the AI for it. And
what are some things that people need to consider? So say they did take a picture of a plant and it spits back an answer. What are some things that people need to consider when they get that answer, in the sense of, if it is really that plant or not, because, I mean, we're talking different parts of the world. We're talking, like John said, could be sun, could be shade, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do people, is there other ways that you recommend people get more information? Like if they go, search that plant and get more details, like even if it would grow in their area?
Yeah, so in the big picture, of course, you want to cross-reference whatever the suggestions are from these apps to see, is this a plant that's actually going to grow in my area? And a lot of the times, some of these apps are going to be geolocated, so they'll be able to hone in on your area. But sometimes there's things that you can just immediately exclude if it just doesn't make sense for your particular region. And then beyond region, I also think of where within a developed area, within a city, those plants might be. So if you're in a more natural area, the edge of a wood, versus if you're in a more urban area where every plant's intentionally selected and put somewhere, that's a good indicator for whittling down the list. A lot of times in the landscape, you're going to see a lot of the same plants. It's a palette of plants that are commonly implemented in these designs. And as you walk by them and you see them at different times of the year and different growing conditions, you kind of build this internal database. Okay, this is what this plant's going to look like in January, in June, in October. So thinking about that in the developed area versus the more naturalized parks. So that's the first area that I'd look at as well. And I also kind of look at patterns. So sometimes people will send a picture of a plant that just one individual plant that may not always look the best. But then if they take a big step back and see a pattern where other of those plants are situated in that same site that look a little bit better, that might be a better representation for identifying it.
Yeah. And it's pretty interesting too, because, you know, when people are trying to identify the plant nowadays with the use of the internet, in the sense of companies, you know, new plant producers, you know, you work with a lot of ornamental horticulture producers. They have to load all of that information online nowadays for people to find their new plants, and they post photos and multiple photos, different angles, that almost the new plants on the market get easier identified because there's more information out there on them, because ultimately all these apps are scrubbing the internet for the photos. And if Burpee releases a new petunia and you take a picture, well, you're going to get that immediate response that, oh, this is a Burpee petunia, because Burpee has flooded the internet with that new image, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually, you know, some of these new little annuals and perennials, they can not only come up and tell you, oh, it's a petunia, but it is this exact petunia, which is amazing, because back, I mean, you know, I remember I used to get so shocked by my dad when we would travel, and he'd be like, oh, that's an oak tree. And I'm like, oh, wow, he knows it's an oak tree. But now, you know, you can say specifically what oak it is.
The genus, the history.
Yeah, just so much more information that, you know, it's not just a petunia. It's not just a pansy. It's actually this pansy or this petunia or this calibrachoa.
You know, one thing I don't expect would be to get varieties of roses, right?
Right.
You know, like there's 3,000 pink roses. But I've used it and find that it was correct on some of the varieties of roses. You know, some that are really common and maybe a little distinctive, you would get those.
Yeah, it's shocking, right?
Yeah. And then, you know, just the capacity for it to really kind of get down to some of the varieties is really uncanny and sometimes. And that's always really, really interesting. And then something else with the varieties, too, because narrowing it down to variety can be very tough. Sometimes you'll see plants that have cultivar reversions. For example, you might have a variegated pittosporum that somebody sends you a picture of it without that variegation, but you take a closer look at the whole plant and see there's parts of it variegated. So you can actually kind of whittle down to variety using a combination of that technology and then also some observations.
Yeah. So now, with your field of research, in the sense of, you know, water runoff and, you know, ornamental horticulture and kind of working in that direction, are you guys seeing huge movement in using technology?
So that's a great question. So I use a variety of technology in my research, really mostly for data collection, particularly on temperature, light transmission, and soil moisture. And so I use a lot of technology on that to see what some of our practices are doing in the field application. And then a lot of times, so I travel a good bit around mostly the South, and I'm very fortunate. I get to walk around, look at plants, and that's one of my favorite parts of my job. A lot of times I'll encounter a plant that I'm not really sure what it is. Maybe it's something that I haven't encountered frequently enough. And being able to use this technology to identify that plant, but then also see where they're using that plant, is something that really helps me expand what plant palette I'm going to use for some of my research, but also get ideas for, okay, if I see a plant performing well in this very wet area, I've got an inclination that that's going to do well in some of the rain garden installations.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, now you're starting to have this own database of information that you're creating, in the sense of what does well where, or, maybe what doesn't do well also, because, as you mentioned, you might see something underperforming in one of the areas that you're working, be like, oh, I thought this would work well here, but it doesn't. And then now you have that information. And do you guys, within the research, that you're doing, is it just you, or is it a group of people also working on it?
Oh, we've got a fantastic team. So at the Hammond station, I'm one of the faculty there. Dr. Jebsfield is also a faculty member there. We've got an excellent staff crew and everybody who works specifically at that station. And we have trial gardens there that are open to the public that a lot of our stakeholders and a lot of just our local citizens come by and check out. So we've got a whole great team that really pushes forward the mission and works together collaboratively. So it's absolutely a team effort.
All right. Hey, we're going to have to take another break. When we get back, we'll wrap up chatting with Dr. Damon Abdi from Louisiana, but we just got to take a quick break right now.
Yep, got a couple of 2 or 3 comments, questions that John will be addressing too on the other side. Going to take a break for our friends on Biz Talk Radio. Welcome to Garden America. Brian Main, John Begnasco, Tiger Palafox. Back with Damon. Going to wrap things up after these messages on Biz Talk Radio. All righty, we are back from that break. Thank you, those tuned in on Biz Talk Radio. Do appreciate it. Each and every week, each and every week, even if you're listening to a replay show. So we are in the last segment of hour number 1. If you are tuned in on Biz Talk Radio, we continue. You've got news coming up top of the hour. Facebook Live, we just continue. Back with Damon. Tiger?
All right, we've got do we have a couple...
You're on.
We have a couple questions.
You're on a different microphone
David,
this morning.
Sorry. We have a couple questions, David, so hold on one second.
Yeah, first off, we have 850 instant messages that say, how can I get paid to walk around looking at plants? But this one comes from Carla in Huntington Beach, California, Damon. And she says, can you recommend a good app for ID? And is there somewhere she can find your research results on ID apps?
So as far as recommending a certain ID or ID app, there's a lot of different ones out there. I've only experimented with a few of them. I know that the camera on the iPhone has part of it that will automatically do that, I believe, and there's several other. I can't really necessarily say one is better than the other, but I know there's a wide range out there, and I think looking at the different reviews and seeing what some of your friends and colleagues work with is a good way. But my opinion is try different ones, and you can actually download, several of the apps and then use those on the same plant and then see which ones you're most comfortable with, see how consistent they are.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say on some of these apps too, I think they're kind of moving into the direction of less focus on the identification, which they do very well, but they also want to help you with your own landscape, where you put the information of what's in your landscape into the app, and it'll remind you, fertilize it, trim it. These are some pests that are, plaguing it, and so it's a good little tool to remind you of what's happening in your own garden too.
Yeah. And then to answer the part about some of the other things. So my research, I've got a lot of my information posted on the Louisiana State Ag Center Extension website. So a lot of my work, you can read on there. And of course, if y'all find my email, LinkedIn, I'm always open to connect. But I think to a greater note, regardless of which state or which region you're in, throughout the country, there's a lot of great extension folks that develop a lot of fact sheets that are very regionally specific and will give maintenance tips that are directly applicable to the individual searching region. So that's usually my first suggestion for finding some of that information.
Oh, good deal. Any more questions?
No, Carla just answered back, though, that was a great idea.
Oh,
Thank you.
All right. Well, Damon, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Lots of good information, lots of fun stuff. Technology is always evolving and changing. And, it's funny because, you would think, oh, plants, we're not in the loop with technology or what's happening, but it is helping us kind of shape the way we do things and bringing more awareness and bringing more information to us. And for you in the research industry as well, I'm sure it's a huge help just to be able to share the data, document the data, keep the data. So good luck to you on your research. And how's the weather right now where you're at?
Oh, it's great. So it's warm. It's mid-November and South Louisiana is very warm, and can't ask for anything better for football season. Actually, funny enough, I was born in Southern California. I'm a diehard Chargers fan, so go Bolts too.
All right. Well,
we used to be Chargers fans.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you move, you can just keep it. We feel jaded. So, well, have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
You bet, Damon.
Take care.
Thank you. Interesting.
Just interesting. I mean, when we were traveling, John and I would just be so shocked by the use of just the Google, like the Google image. You just put it into Google.
Oh, yeah.
You take a photo, you put it in there, and it spits back out so much information. And from there, we can be like, is this anything? Is it relevant? Is it not relevant?
Well, it was so good that I used to have the app. I think it was called Picture This in it, but it cost $30 a year, which is not that much. But I used to be a buyer, so I try to conserve wherever I can.
Yeah.
So it was so good that I dropped the Picture This app because I thought that Google did just as good a job.
Yeah. I had an app on my phone a couple of 2 or 3 years ago. We were at Tiger's nursery, and you were skeptical.
Yeah.
And I took a picture, and it did a good job. But then I also found out that it did make mistakes, and that Google was actually better than that app that I had.
Yeah, if I was designing an app or telling somebody this is what I want, I would like to be able to push wrong. So
it's
feedback. It's feedback.
So it knows, hey, that was wrong.
Now, did we discuss, I think he touched on it a little bit, or if not, an idea for these apps too, not just to identify it, but he also kind of mentioned, okay, this is where it grows, this is the season, fertilizer. In other words, giving you care of that particular plant that you take a picture of.
Well, a lot of these apps are moving in that direction,
right?
Because it's like we just said. I mean, Google is giving away that information for free. So if you really want somebody to pay for your app, you've got to give them more.
And that would be an expansion of that app.
Yeah, and so what it does is, it keeps track of, you put, for your patio, you have this plant, this plant, this plant, this plant, this plant, this plant, and then it sends you email reminders about, hey, fertilize this, time to trim this,
right?
Cut back water, and so it helps you garden better.
But again, just like
what
the
about
internet,
a red light that says you've already surpassed the permanent wilting point?
Exactly, you're done.
Again, but just like the internet, though, with everything that you read, see, or hear, and even those apps we're talking about, just be cautious. I think it's a great guide, and for the most part, they're probably correct. But I would do a little, I would research a little more with whatever answer you're getting.
Yeah,
right?
I would be skeptical of anything with AI. One thing that needs to increase is skepticism.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Because, some of this stuff out there is just ridiculous.
There are so many.
You can't tell.
There's so many AI voices now on YouTube that are narrating, quasi documentaries or short stories, and I've come to recognize them all. And I have a hard time knowing that it's an AI voice when it says, "And if you're like me, I would." If I was like you, you don't exist, and I've got to get in my subconscious.
I like it that Brian argues with AI.
I do. I'm arguing, absolutely.
But I will almost argue to the other side of it that I think that one of the biggest issues, especially in the plant world, is the idea that there's so many fake images of plants out there.
Yes, absolutely.
The rose that doesn't exist, the orchid that doesn't exist.
I get people that send me these rose things.
The tree that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And,
or real plants that have just been photoshopped.
We got to take
saying.
a break.
Yeah.
Let's keep this on the other side of the news. News for Biz Talk Radio, that is.
Yeah, we got some things to go, topics to go over from our listeners.
That's right. No news coming up for Facebook Live. We'll be back very quickly. Those on Biz Talk Radio back at 6 minutes after, if indeed your market does carry both hours. This is Garden America. Well, if you're on Biz Talk Radio, welcome to hour number 2. Thank you for tuning in. Those on Facebook Live. So just after we ended hour number 1 for Biz Talk Radio, and again for Facebook Live, it's a continuous show. Tiger had to go outside and pay some bills. John, he's paying Well, who's he paying? He went outside to pay somebody. He said he got a text.
The milkman, I believe.
Oh, the milkman.
Yeah, we were talking about the milkman during the break.
He does. He owes the milkman. So Tiger will be back. Here we go, John, real quick. Well, you know what? Let's start with the questions, comments above what I'm seeing right now to stay in order.
Yeah, one is from our buddy John Domenici from Southland Sod, but I'm going to wait till Tiger gets back so we can go over that together.
Okay.
Rochelle, our friend Rochelle, commented that her grandson finally got the gopher that's been plaguing him because she got the gopher hawk.
What an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Right? Your first gopher, you feel proud.
Yeah.
Skin it and frame it. That's what, like somebody's first dollar bill when they go into business.
I just use it. I use it to feed the literal hawks. I've got that little altar out there that I just sacrifice the gophers on.
Sure.
And then, let's see. Linda in Reading wants to know if it's too late to plant carrot and beet seeds in Reading. Well, Reading's going to be freezing.
It's either very hot or very cold in Reading, right? There's no in between.
Well, there's some nice periods in between, but it depends whether it's warm enough for the seeds to germinate. Mm-hmm. Unless you have a hard freeze, it's not going to be a problem. So frosts aren't going to hurt either the beets or the carrots. Radishes come up right away. So one of the things I would do, Linda, is if you do plant the beets or the carrot seeds, they take longer to come up. So in those rows, put a few here and there, put a few radish seeds. So the radishes will come up right away and they'll mark the row. So while the other seeds are waiting for the proper temperature to germinate, you'll at least know where they are.
Okay.
A whole new set of weeds is going to be coming up this time of year.
Rochelle says, regarding her son and the gopher, he would have liked to have framed it and leave it out for his buddies to see.
Well, speaking of showing it to your buddies, my wife doesn't want to see the gophers anymore.
Oh, the dead gophers?
Yeah.
What, are you like a cat that brings it in, all proud of yourself?
I like to hold it up. Just say, look what I did.
Look what. It's just like a dog or a cat that catches something and brings it in.
Put in your thumb, pull out a plum.
So
say, what a good boy am I. I put in the gopher hawk, pull out a gopher.
Other than gophers, what else do you battle? What's another nemesis of yours besides me?
It's funny you use that word because I have a rose called Nemesis.
Really?
Yeah.
And look who's sneaking back in here. Tiger thought we'd wait until he got back, but no, we started things
right behind John, and then the camera's right on me.
And then it's so funny because I said, "Who did Tiger go out to pay?" And he thought you went out to pay the milkman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Are
you chewing gum?
No, I had some Cheez-Its.
That's great.
What's funny is Janine has a coworker that has a cow, and gave us some.
And Janine is your wife.
Yes,
for those people.
Janine is my wife.
Okay.
She has a coworker that has a cow, and he gave her some real cow's milk, and it was delicious, but I expected it to taste a little bit different. I don't know if I've ever had real. I'm sure I've had.
You're saying
real
it's
cow's
not
milk.
homogenized.
This is straight from the cow to us.
Still warm?
No, not still warm. But it was great. I expected it to taste different, and it didn't taste different than what I buy at the grocery store that much. I mean,
Do you buy 2% milk or whole milk?
I buy 2%, but
it should taste a little creamier.
Right, that's what I expected, but
Right.
it was not. I thought, I don't know.
And would you say, because I don't know, would you say that it wouldn't last as long? It would
Like
spoil
non-homogenized milk.
Right, it would expire quicker.
It's not pasteurized.
Not pasteurized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We raised our kids on goat milk.
And does that taste different?
I tell you what, I love goat cheese.
It tastes better.
I'll bet it does. Yeah.
If you, it has more flavor,
Yeah.
and you think it might be an off-putting flavor, but it's not. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And does it bake well? Like, can you use it in things and some of that flavor gets in? Because
it's not
when
as,
they use
not
real
as,
butter for things,
Oh, yeah.
that food tastes so much
Sure,
better.
sure.
There's not as much fat as in cow milk. So you
Maybe
can't
not.
whip it,
Oh, okay.
and to make whipped cream.
Yeah, like some
John,
of that.
harkening back to that song in the '80s, just whip it, right? Wasn't that
Whip it
Devo?
good.
Devo, yeah. Was that Devo?
I think so.
Okay.
Well,
I'm not good with the '80s.
now that we're bringing this up, where did the phrase "don't have a cow" come from?
Gosh,
Bart Simpson.
When I was a kid, we said that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But why?
Don't have a
Why
cow,
would you
man.
say "don't have a cow"?
Well, if somebody who is watching us on Facebook knows the origin of "don't have a cow," let us know. We like things like that. Do you know what? Do
Because
you know
I
what-
heard that from Bart Simpson. So.
Do you know where the term, like, give me a shot, like a shot glass? Do you know how that started?
Oh yeah, because they used to trade bullets for drinking.
That's exactly right. A
Yeah.
guy would go into a saloon. He didn't have a lot of money, so he would trade bullets for a drink, and he'd give me a shot.
Yeah.
Good for you, Tiger. You know what? You get an A.
Doc
you.
Holliday, it started with him, right?
Is that right?
That I don't know. I just thought it was something that a lot of the Old West guys, the cowboys, would do.
Yeah, I didn't know either. I just
It's just like
wanted
riding
to
shotgun.
be part of the
Oh
conversation.
yeah, wagons.
In the wagons, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey,
I
Tig-
bet you. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say we had a question here, and I thought it was a good topic.
Okay.
Let's do it.
From our buddy John Domenici.
Okay.
And he said, since the weather's starting to change, and this was something I wanted to talk about anyway, can you explain what the term dormancy means in all plants that are not a lawn?
Do you know
I think
something?
he knows what it means in a lawn, but what about other plants?
That's a very good question. I think a
Yeah.
lot of times we talk about things that are just natural,
Yes.
and we have people listening that go, like in school,
Right.
I should know that, but I'm not going to raise my hand. I want that to
Because
be
it looks stupid.
That's why we have you,
Dress.
Brian. That's why we have you, Brian.
exactly. I would say to the layperson, dormant means like hibernation, right? Mm-hmm. In a sense.
In a sense.
right, but why do plants hibernate then?
Well, they're tired.
They're
What do you
exhausted.
mean? Are you kidding me?
But in
Because
the-
they exert. I would imagine because they're exerting so much to stay alive and grow, and it's is it a regeneration?
What about in the tropics? Do they continue to grow or do they go dormant?
You know that question has plagued humankind, John,
Through the
through
centuries.
the centuries,
Back to the Mayas, right?
or even before.
I don't know who was before the Mayas.
Oh, goodness.
Was there someone?
I'm sure.
Oh, there's always been somebody before.
Well, that's true. Until you get to Eden.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
But,
anyway, on dormancy,
Yeah.
it depends on the particular plant and where it grows. In a cold area, plants go dormant to survive, right? Harsh conditions, freezes, and
Right.
snow and ice and things like that.
And you would
It's
argue
self-preservation.
And you would argue why, and I think that's the ultimate thing is
Right.
like what you just said. It's self-preservation because plants have foliage
Right.
to be able to produce energy, and that's the way they breathe. That's the way they do everything, right? Well, those cells in a cold environment, they would freeze and die
And explode.
and explode,
Right.
and so therefore the plant would die if it was trying to grow during that time of
Now,
year.
John, isn't that how freeze-proof works? We used to use that product when you spray it on when it gets cold. Didn't that affect the cells somehow or protect the cell
Yeah,
structure?
they used to say it worked like that was from. I think that guy was
Arkansas, down south,
From, was
wasn't
it Arkansas? I thought it was Alabama.
Alabama, right? Okay.
University of Alabama.
One of the two.
But he explained it as being antifreeze for the cells. It would go into the cells and prevent the cells themselves from freezing. And I've got like 20 bottles of it. If you need one, let me know.
I
'cause they
came
don't
across
sell
a few.
Yeah,
I think you need it more than I do.
Yeah,
You,
up
you're
there.
you're colder than I am.
But I look at it as well. That's something else I got to do.
Okay,
But-
we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
To stay
All
on.
right, when we get back, let's
Don't
talk
lose your
about
train of
this
thought either, Tiger.
dormancy.
I'm not.
Some
We're
more.
going to talk about dormancy and taking naps. That's on the agenda on the other side. A break for Biz Talk Radio. Our friends on Facebook Live, we are coming right back here on Garden America. Okay, back from that break here on Garden America. Dormancy, hibernation, and why do plants self-preservation, right?
Yeah, but you brought up hibernation, and dormancy and hibernation are very different, in the sense of plants and animals. But
and the climate signals time for the plants
Yes.
to go dormant. As the days get shorter in northern climates, there's less sun to keep up the growth of the plants. So that then the temperatures begin to cool. and it signals to the plants native to that area it's time to rest.
Yeah.
Let's hunker down. It's a hunkering down period that
It
you
is.
always think about.
Right.
And it's the same thing as far as like what you were kind of hinting at with animals is like the reason why they go and hibernate is because they wouldn't be able to survive out in that
Right.
environment during that time of year.
Yeah.
But we don't say the bear's gone dormant, but
Yeah.
he could.
But then, people do get very confused because they think, only plants only go dormant in the wintertime. And, that's not the truth because as John mentioned, to each region,
Right.
plants go dormant during all times of the year. It just depends on the region. They go dormant in the desert in the summertime because it's too hot. They go, dormant in areas that it gets too cold because it gets too cold. In the tropics, he brought up that
Yes.
ultimate question: does a plant ever go dormant?
That was my next question was that, hopping on the back of what John stated, was here in Southern California, for the most part, we have decent weather all year.
Right.
Decent.
But we
warm.
have 2 dormant times.
But let's say a plant that normally goes dormant in the winter is in a climate that's warm all year. I mean, really warm.
Mm-hmm.
What would that do to their so-called biological clock?
Well, I mean, John works with roses. And, normally roses go very dormant in the wintertime. They lose all their leaves. They go to a complete rest cycle. Well, Southern California doesn't always mean that. So he's got plenty of roses out there in January that have leaves on them still. Maybe even are trying to set flowers still.
That's why with roses, and it's different things with different varieties of plants, but with roses, right now you should have a few weeks ago stopped deadheading, because when you deadhead, plants know that, hey, we've done our work for this year when we set seed. Now we can rest. Well, if you keep cutting off the hips, you're signaling to the plant you need to keep working. You still need to reproduce. So you leave the hips on, and that helps the plants go dormant when the weather may not be cold enough for that to happen.
Now, deadheading, that a term, you call that the Jerry Garcia method?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And
That makes a lot of sense.
And John brings up a great point right there, because people would then say, well, what happens if the plants don't go dormant? Like, what if you tried to get it to live through the whole year? What if you fertilized it? What if you grew it in a greenhouse? What if you did all these things?
In other words, forcing it to do something against its will?
Right. And ultimately, you can create a very problematic plant that could be very prone to disease or pests, or even, you can stress out a plant. Like it's you can do that.
How about
where
if I
just
forced you to
stress it.
stay up for a week?
Exactly.
How would you feel by Friday if you made it that far?
I might crack on you. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean,
when his face turns red.
yeah.
That's
But letting things go dormant is also important, because to the health of the plant.
and how about we've talked about the weather when it gets all of a sudden it's hot and then cold and hot and cold, and what that can do to plants because it's signaling one thing and then back to the other.
Well, I'm wondering. I think I told you guys that for my birthday I got a little greenhouse with a heating pad underneath.
It was in your library when we were there. It was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, well,
Very nice.
I stuck some rose cuttings in, and normally in the winter, it can take like 2 to 3 months for a rose to either die or root for me because of the cold weather. And I just don't know what it's going to do. But I put this in my garage. It's got the heating pad underneath, and it's got the LED lights on top.
You like those LED lights?
In 2 weeks, the rose is rooted.
Wow.
And that never would have happened this time of year. And usually they turn black at the bottom.
Yeah.
Do you like controlling your environment?
I like being in control all the time.
So now, now here's another thing though, that goes along with that. So it rooted in 2 weeks.
Right.
Okay. So you have these cuttings. How are you going to get them to go outside?
That's the next challenge.
Right.
Because they have to be acclimated. Right now, they're under perfect conditions.
Oh, they're loving life right now.
Yeah.
You know who you are? You're Dr. Frankenstein.
And I'm trying to decide, is it important that I turn the lights off at night?
To start acclimating them.
Yeah, because I've been leaving the lights on 24 hours a day. And, I have to do some research. Do the plants, because the plants change. They give off, use carbon dioxide during the day and give off oxygen. But at night, the reverse is true. They use oxygen. I said that backwards.
Yeah, my head's spinning.
During the day, they use oxygen and give off carbon dioxide. At night, they reverse that.
Okay.
So plants breathe.
No, because
Plants use carbon dioxide
and give off oxygen that we breathe.
Right.
But then you're saying they reverse that at night?
Yes. So I'm wondering, if they're reversing it at night, processes are changing.
Yeah. So like you're saying, they're always breathing in carbon dioxide. So the fact that they never breathe in oxygen because like you never allow it to rest, could that ultimately stress out the plant?
That's what I'm wondering.
Could that ultimately kill the plant?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You can write a paper on it.
Yeah.
That's what people do.
We'll see.
But also, I mean, you have temperatures to deal with. So what are you going to, I mean, aside from the light, where is their next place you're going to put them? In the garage by themselves?
And how many do you have,
because the garage
by
is
the
going
way?
to be cold.
What's that?
How many do you have?
40.
Well, I would take a couple, split them up, and give them different situations.
Pick your favorites. Pick your favorites.
Right? Don't
the ones that you don't like. Sacrifice them.
Right now they're not. They're in those little pellets.
Yeah. Peat
So
pellets.
I didn't use soil because I wanted it to be sterile.
Yeah.
I thought that would help. So I'm going to take them out and transfer them into ocean forest.
Okay.
Potting
That's what
soil,
you've been saving it for.
which I
this moment.
saved
This
since
is the moment.
last December. So it's aged a year.
Yeah.
Lisa says, but if you
well-aged.
have the lights on 24 hours a day, how does it know when it's night?
Yeah, that's what the question is. Is that going to ultimately
Yeah.
stress out the plant? And this goes back to kind of like even our own world, because there are areas that during certain times of the year they never go dark, and so therefore those plants up there have to acclimate to that thing, and that's why some plants will never live there. Is because some plants will never be able to acclimate to that. They require, like what John said, maybe they require that change in breathing in order to survive, where that plant up there has acclimated to not needing that change.
It is break time.
Wow.
2 more segments. Next segment's going to be a longer one, followed by the short one, so do stay with us, obviously. Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live, Brian Main, John Begnesco, Tiger Palafox, and we'll continue talking about this and whatever you want to talk about on Facebook Live after these messages on Biz Talk Radio. Stay with us. How about that? A snap of the finger on Facebook Live, and we are back. Thanking those that tune in to Biz Talk Radio wherever you are across the country, and of course Facebook Live all over the world. John, we seep into everybody's stream of consciousness every now and then.
I don't think Tiger alluded to this, but he may not have been clear enough because Carla's mentioning some plants go dormant in the summer, and that's what you were saying.
You're
we
right.
have 2 dormant seasons.
Yeah.
And just as cold can signal dormancy,
Heat.
excess heat can also signal dormancy.
Yeah.
And so plants do have to.
And excess rainfall. That's we back to kind of like this idea: do plants go dormant in the tropics? And yes, they can go dormant there because things like excess rainfall can force them to not grow.
They have
because
a dry season
they
there
have,
in the
and
tropics.
they have a dry season. So there's certain things that it's not just cold or hot. It's also rainfall. It's also time of year, where the time of day. Maybe there's excessive light. Maybe there's not enough light. One of the this was back when I was growing up in like middle school. Remember the big thing was like the biodome, because I think the world was failing at the time, and they were trying to like be like, oh, how can we create our own? We're going to create a dome that we can all live in.
Remember when the world was failing?
Yeah, we came.
failing.
Remember how close we came to failing?
There was like acid rain and like,
And then somebody came in and graded the world as a D. Yeah. So we didn't flunk.
It was a D plus, I think.
D plus. Okay, D plus.
But they created this like biodome, right? To be like, if we needed to,
Self-sufficient.
we could all go into this biodome.
Well, that's the same thing as going to another planet.
Yeah, that was before Elon Musk said, let's just go to Mars.
But they ran into this issue because they created the ideal environment for everything. But then they realized we can't do that.
It's not going to work
that doesn't
for
work,
everything.
right? Like that's not they can't do that. Like we have to create the good and the bad for it to work.
Well, there's a reason why we have seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, there you go right there.
In the first biodome where everything was perfect like that, and they realized it's just not going to work, was the Garden of Eden.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, but they should have kept the snakes out. See, that was the problem.
Just one thing.
The snake. My gosh, we didn't think of that. Okay, so Tanya's question, John. Actually, she's got two.
Oh, all right.
Scroll up.
Is she a premium member?
Yeah. She get
You know
two?
what? Her credit's good.
Oh, okay. She said,
You got it?
He pre-read it though to make sure.
well, no, I got waylaid by Kevin's question. Does Roger Hedgecock still have apple orchards in Juliet?
Kevin, I haven't seen Roger in about 5 or
goodness.
6 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that. But I know inquiring minds want to know that, John. That's why Kevin asked it.
Yeah.
All right.
I think
Tanya's-
I told you I did a show with Roger Hedgecock once.
About his
Anyway-
apple orchards?
No.
Yeah.
It was at the fair, Del Mar Fair. Anyway, Tanya says, reminds me of a question. How long will soil be good if the bag's not open?
Oh yeah.
A year? 2? Does it break down in there?
Right. Yeah. That's a very valid, good question. Right.
So no air necessarily is getting into the bag.
No, because they always put holes in bags.
Oh, that's
I don't
right.
know any bag that does not have.
Yeah, you know what?
holes.
They would have to. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise it'd be like putting an egg in the microwave.
Yes,
Right?
it would be.
Yeah.
You're right. Yes.
And it depends on the kind of soil, because if it's something like the Fox Farm soils that are,
Very active.
very active, the microorganisms in there are living, and they're going to continue to grow until they're too dry,
Yep.
and then they'll go dormant.
And they're
right?
taking all the nutrients out of the bag
Right,
as it
they're eating
sits.
it. But the soil's still good. The if you have a soil like a seed starting soil, those are usually sterile. So those you could seal up and nothing would happen.
Right.
So it depends. But normally, I don't think you have to worry about. There's no expiration dates on any bags of soil, but they do put it on. I'm trying to think, Tiger, isn't it on mycorrhizae sometimes?
Yeah. So I mean, when it comes to that, like you say, there is no expiration date. It's kind of like sometimes this idea of medicine. They put an expiration date on medicine, and it's not that the medicine expires; it's that it loses some of its efficiency, or effectiveness, potency. And that's the same thing with the soil. And is that if you leave it and don't put it into soil and water it and have new organic and air and all that kind of stuff, it's going to become less potent.
Turns from soil to dirt.
Exactly. Yeah. But then there are products out there. There's a few synthetic fertilizer companies that produce soils that do put synthetic fertilizers in there, and those will go bad after maybe 6 months.
Okay, so what's
whatever.
the difference?
Because they're synthetic, so they lose their potency much quicker.
Right.
We've talked about this. Organic material breaks down very slow, and it always is kind of there. It would take hundreds of years in order to lose its effectiveness. Where a chemical fertilizer, if it's exposed to air and sunlight and water, it could lose its effectiveness in days or a week.
Anything created in the lab,
Yeah.
for the most part, not going to last as long.
Yeah.
Well,
But
chemicals, a lot of those will actually transfer through the bottle. Mm-hmm. They, I'm trying to think.
Yeah,
we used to have a guy on the show.
We
one
talked
time.
about this before.
He referred to them. I probably shouldn't say what he referred to them as, but the
We're going to
bottles.
get shut down, and we're going to be demonetized if you say it.
Well, remember when there was the food crisis in Ethiopia?
Oh, this is when the world was failing. Yes.
Yeah, when back during the biodome era, he would call them Ethiopian bottles because the bottles would get, sucked in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's because the chemicals were leaching out, right?
Mm.
So, Well, see, that brought me to. I was
No,
going to
you
make
were
a point on
you were
something.
just making the point of the chemicals.
Right.
Is
I was gonna say-
actually always going away.
Right.
Like they never from the day
it
that
goes
they're
through
created.
the plastic.
Yeah.
Like if it was a glass bottle, that wouldn't happen.
Right.
But now we use plastic. But the fertilizer that I use on my roses is from Growmore,
Right.
and I think they make it special certain times of the year because I think
Yeah, I couldn't get it.
Yeah, you told me you couldn't get it. But the San Diego Rose Society gets it every year. You put in your order before December, and they get it for you. But when I get those bags, there's an expiration date on them. It says, only good for 1 year, because there's a lot of living organisms in there,
yeah.
and they have to be used.
Yeah, and also, I mean, to some degree, it's on the bags. It's where you keep that bag. As you mentioned, if that bag gets really hot, inside there, it begins to also affect the organisms because they can only survive under certain temperatures and things like that. If the bag doesn't get proper airflow, as you mentioned, Brian, it could affect what's in the bag. So to answer her question is that there is no expiration date, but I wouldn't.
Leave it lying around.
Yeah, I wouldn't keep it more than 6 months to a year.
Yep.
After that, it's kind of like you might as well just throw it in your garden then and just see what happens because it's not the
It's
same.
still organic material
Yeah.
that whatever's in your garden can use. We covered one area of dormancy, but then the other thing to cover is what do you do when plants are dormant? And that's happening now. The days are shorter. Cut back. If you've got irrigation set up to come on every so often, it doesn't need to come on as often anymore.
Right.
Did you have rain, by the way?
I did. I have
Yes.
2 days of rain.
Yeah.
Rain yesterday and rain this morning.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, I didn't see this morning, but yesterday, yeah.
Yesterday it came down for maybe like 3 minutes, really hard.
Really?
Yeah.
Hey, Carla wants to know, is there something she can do to stimulate blooms on a white geranium she wants to use for a Christmas display?
Oh, yeah.
Well-
John doesn't agree with me, but I say yes.
Well, you give both, and then she can choose.
Yeah, see who was right.
Yeah.
No, first of all, I was going to say is geraniums are one thing that you want to make sure don't get overwatered this time of the year. Carla's in Huntington Beach, right by
Yes.
the coast. It's going to be even cooler. So,
It may be a little windy, too.
yeah, so you do want to make sure that they dry out in between waterings. Don't keep them damp all the time or they're just going to rot. And then the other thing is that geraniums do pretty good during the winter because you don't have budworm coming up, right?
Yeah. Like fall, they look after the summer
Yeah.
when they get terrorized by budworm
Yeah.
and they're stressed out in the fall, they look beautiful. Yeah. But
So anyway, to keep them going, the other thing with light, I don't know how you're going to help that, but
yeah.
they should just keep growing.
But how do you get them to bloom, John? That's her question.
No, that's what you want to answer right now.
'Cause
I think
I just say super bloom. Put
it's
it on there.
Just
Spos-
the eating it.
Yeah, exactly. And John doesn't agree with that. He doesn't think that it will work.
I didn't say I don't agree.
Now, Veronica's answering a question here. Like plumeria, it's time to stop watering.
Yes.
Yeah, plumeria are going dormant, and
Yeah.
you think of plumeria as being tropical plants.
Yeah.
There's actually one species that is tropical,
We got to take a break.
and the other
hold it.
species is not. But we'll tell you after the break.
Okay, zip it. Got to stay on time. We've got one more segment coming up. Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live. Stay with us. Garden America coming right back. Laughing and scratching. That's what we're doing here, especially between breaks. Okay, let's get back to what we were talking about here so we don't
What
forget.
were we talking about?
See?
He wanted.
We're talking about, well, the original question was, I can speak up, I guess. We're talking about, Carla wanted to stimulate
a
bloom
golf match. What's going on here?
at the fourth tee here. Looks like a 25-yard putt. So Carla wanted to know about stimulating blooms.
Oh,
And then
yeah,
we talked about
answered that.
plumerias.
Oh, the plumerias is what we were talking
Right,
about.
right.
And you were saying there's two.
Yeah,
primary types.
There is a tropical species which is evergreen, and it doesn't lose its leaves, but that's very sensitive to cold. So you got to really cut back on the water in the winter, even for that. But the other species is native to Mexico, and Mexico does get cold, and if you're not in tropical Mexico, does get cold. So they're going to lose their leaves, and yeah, you can stop watering altogether.
And you want to stop watering because this idea, like what we talked about, if you keep watering, if you keep fertilizing it, it wants to grow, it keeps growing, and then it gets cold, and then that does way more damage because it's full of water and it's full of new growth. And that's very sensitive to when there is a freeze because there's more water in the plant. The growth is tender and not hardened off like old growth should, on the plant at that time should be. And, in nature does that for the plants. It stops watering, it stops, growing, it does all that. That's where we get into trouble in our own landscape, like John mentioned, turning off the water or turning it down. You have things, not deadheading. We have things we can do to make sure we don't encourage growth.
Would you suggest cutting back on the weather?
Yes. Putting it in a dome.
That's good. You're quick, too, today. Tiger's on top of it today.
Carla's going to try your super bloom, and she's going to talk to the plant.
Oh, there you go.
Just to make sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I go out in the patio. How's everyone doing? Do a little walkthrough.
How's everyone
What's
doing?
going on? You look a little
When they
peaked.
answer you back is when you have the problems.
Do you know that
They're not supposed to. You're saying that I shouldn't be hearing the plants.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about this before, but Charles Darwin wrote a book called The Power of Movement in Plants.
Music and things like that?
Well, it was talking about sensitive plants, can move. Venus flytraps can move. And there's a grass that we call dancing grass that moves according to vibrations. And Darwin spent years trying to get the plant to move according to specific commands. Because you could come in and could make a noise or you could say something and the plant would move. So, you come in and say hello, but then he started going, turn to the right. That I'm making up. I don't know.
But anyway, he tried to get it to do on
This sounds like
specific
opera conditioning, Pavlov's dog.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Well, I think he might have assumed that because the plant was moving in reaction to what he was saying rather than airwaves, sound waves. But anyway, he wrote a whole book on it.
Yeah.
But then there's that whole language barrier, different parts of the world.
He wrote it in English. You're talking about depends where the plants are native to, right?
Yes, exactly.
That was in Water for Elephants. Did you ever read that book?
Who wrote that?
I read that.
The book, I can't remember who wrote the book, but in Water for Elephants, they were beating the heck out of this elephant because it wouldn't obey commands, and then they found out it was Polish. He had been raised under Polish commands, and when they got someone to speak Polish, the elephant did everything they
So
asked.
their answer was to beat it if it didn't respond to their commands.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
makes sense.
I thought you were going to say they figured out that the elephant was deaf.
No. It just spoke a different language. It had been trained in Polish.
Yeah.
In a Polish
Circus.
circus.
Don't worry,
I got the first four letters right.
we've only got about 3 minutes. You're on the home stretch.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys should take it from here.
Next week, we have Ed Livo joining us.
Ed Livo.
Oh,
Boy,
yeah.
I tell you what,
He's been busy.
Ask him one question, he'll give you 20 minutes.
He's been busy.
What's he up to?
If you have
Not only 20 minutes, but 20 interesting and informative minutes.
Yeah, so make sure that you can take notes next week.
Yeah.
Either behind your keyboard or take shorthand or something.
Yeah, if you have any fruit tree questions, plan those now.
Yeah,
during
fruit
the
trees
week
next week, and
ask
I'm sure John's going to have something in the newsletter regarding all of this.
Yeah, he's going to talk about some new varieties out there that we can get excited for in the upcoming year. Obviously talk about, what's happening right now and this time of year, answer questions for you when it comes to fruit trees.
I had a couple complaints, by the way. People said that they could not sign up for the newsletter.
Oh, really?
And two people did, and that shouldn't be. I think you can do it on our website, but if you do have a problem, if you send a note to john@gardenamerica.com, I'll sign you up myself.
Oh, you'll just take care of it.
Yeah.
You'll do the heavy lifting.
Still free after all these years, Brian.
How do we do it, John?
Volume. The this week I wrote an article on gardening by the moon.
Yeah.
The light of the silvery moon?
The light. What is?
See, now Tiger doesn't even know what you're talking about. That was a song from the
Oh.
30s?
Yeah. By the light of the silvery moon.
It's like a barbershop quartet
Yeah.
song, right?
Yeah,
Is it?
exactly. He's gonna when we're done. He's gonna sit in his truck and
Got
Google
a lot
it.
of rhymes in there, like croon and swoon and June.
Oh my goodness.
So we got a minute to go. Time to wrap things up again. Ed Livo next week talking fruit trees, fruits, and he wants a lot of your questions.
Please.
That's what he lives for. Questions.
He does.
Uh,
Might have to-
quickly, Rochelle wants to know if you have grow more at the nursery.
Yes, we do.
So there you go. All right, we're gonna wrap
right.
things up here. Good to be back in studio, back in the deep end of
Yeah,
the pool.
I missed you guys.
I know you did. You came in. You were emotional this morning. He took his hanky out,
Well,
dabbed
welcome
his
back.
eyes.
Yeah.
So have
Gave you all hugs.
You did. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Be safe. Have a safe weekend. We'll do it again. We will reconvene next week right here in Studio B from the iHeart Media and Entertainment Headquarters, San Diego, California. I'm Brian Main, John Bagnasker, Tiger Palafox. Have fun and enjoy. Be back next week. Ed Livo right here. We're talking fruit trees on Garden America. Take care.